You won't believe what really happened behind the closed doors of Clarence McClendon's life. On the outside, he looked like a man of God, preaching in front of thousands, dressing sharp in designer suits, and flying across the world in private jets. People admired him. Many called him a prophet. But deep down, a storm had been brewing for years. His wife, the woman who stood by his side, knew something was wrong. And when she finally spoke out, the truth she revealed was darker than anyone imagined. Clarence McClendon wasn't always famous. He started small, preaching in little churches, building his ministry from the ground up. People were drawn to him. His voice, his confidence, the way he spoke, it felt powerful. Soon his name was everywhere. TV shows, radio, church events, he was becoming a spiritual celebrity. But as his fame grew, so did his appetite for more. More money, more control, and eventually, more women. His wife began noticing small things first. Late night calls that ended as soon as she entered the room, sudden trips he couldn't explain, messages he quickly deleted. At first, she thought she was just being paranoid, but something inside her kept saying, "This isn't right." She prayed, she cried, she tried to convince herself that maybe he was just stressed. Maybe the ministry was taking a toll on him. But deep down, she knew the man she married was starting to disappear. People at church noticed changes too. The sermons became more focused on money. He preached about giving, about blessings, about sowing seeds, but less and less about the Bible. Expensive cars filled the church parking lot. Security guards surrounded him. He stopped talking to members like he used to. Slowly, the church became more of a stage, and Clarence more of a performer. Then came the turning point. One evening, his wife found a receipt in his jacket pocket, a hotel stay in a different city on the same weekend he told her he was at a pastor's retreat. Her heart dropped. She didn't confront him right away. Instead, she started watching him more closely. Every move, every excuse, every strange phone call, she took note. Days turned into weeks, and the evidence started piling up. Her heart broke more each day, but she needed to know the truth before she acted. One night, she followed him. He told her he was flying to another state for a gospel event. But something felt off, so she found a way to track him. What she discovered changed everything. Clarence wasn't at a church. He wasn't at any conference. He was in a luxury hotel with another woman. She stood frozen outside the hotel lobby, her hands shaking as she watched them walk in together. Clarence and a woman she had never seen before. They were laughing, close, too close. It felt like a knife straight to her chest. After everything they'd built, after all the prayers, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, this was what it had come to. She didn't confront him that night. She got back in her car and drove away, tears running down her face. But in that moment, something inside her shifted. She knew this wasn't just a mistake. It was a pattern, and it had to be exposed. Back home, she started digging. She knew he would lie if she asked. So she looked deeper, through his credit card bills, his emails, even private messages from his ministry account. What she found was worse than she ever imagined. There wasn't just one woman. There were several. Flights booked to different cities, lavish gifts, secret bank accounts. She realized that while she thought they were building a life together, Clarence had been living a double life, one as a pastor and one as a playboy. Still, she kept quiet. For weeks, she went to church, smiled at members, stood next to him during sermons, all while knowing the truth. It tore her apart. But she was planning something. She didn't want revenge. She wanted justice, not just for herself, but for all the people who looked up to him, for those who gave their last dollar to support his ministry, believing he was a man of God. The final straw came when she overheard him on the phone late one night. He was in his office, door cracked just enough for her to hear. He was talking to one of the women, not with guilt or shame, but with excitement, making plans, promising things, talking like he was single, like she didn't exist. That night, she knew it was over, but she didn't just want to walk away. She wanted the world to know the truth. So she reached out to someone unexpected, a former church staff member who had left months ago under strange circumstances. At first, he was hesitant to talk, but when she shared what she had found, he broke down. He had seen things too. He had kept secrets. He had been paid to stay silent. But now he was ready to talk. Together, they started gathering everything: documents, screenshots, witness statements. It was all there, a clear picture of a man who had built an empire on lies. She felt heartbroken, but she also felt powerful. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. The weight of the truth became heavier with each passing day, but so did her determination. Every memory of standing beside Clarence on that church stage, every time she held back tears while he preached about loyalty and love, it all felt like part of a twisted play. And now she held the script. She and the former staff member, now a close ally, had collected enough proof to shake the foundation Clarence had built his entire image on. But exposing him wouldn't be simple. Clarence had influence. People worshipped him. The moment she spoke, she knew they'd call her bitter, angry, maybe even crazy. But she was ready. They decided to go public in a way that couldn't be silenced. A private online page, protected but accessible, where the truth would speak for itself. No flashy words, just facts, receipts, voice notes, screenshots, testimonies. It went live at midnight on a Sunday. By morning, everything had changed. The reaction was like a wildfire. At first, confusion, then denial. Clarence remained silent. His team issued a short message, vague, careful, avoiding any real answers. But people were watching. Some church members defended him blindly. Others began asking questions. Within 48 hours, local blogs had picked it up. Allegations against prominent pastor. But this was no allegation, it was evidence, staring them in the face. Clarence called her that evening. For the first time in months, he didn't sound confident. His voice shook. "Why are you doing this to me?" he asked. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She simply said, "I'm not doing this to you. You did this to yourself." Then she hung up, but she wasn't prepared for what came next. That night, she noticed a black car parked across the street from her house. No one got out. It stayed there for hours. Her phone began ringing nonstop. Unknown numbers, threatening messages, even people pretending to be reporters. She realized Clarence wasn't going down without a fight. He still had power, and now he was using it to intimidate her. The former staff member urged her to go to the police, but she hesitated. Would they take her seriously? This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was about control, fear, silence. But if Clarence thought fear would stop her, he didn't know her anymore. She wasn't the same woman who used to stay quiet to keep the peace. One day, she found something chilling. An envelope slid under her door. No name, no return address. Inside were printed photos, pictures of her walking to her car, picking up groceries, sitting at a cafe. Someone had been following her, watching her. The message was clear: back off or pay the price. She sat on her bed that night, heart pounding, wondering how far Clarence would go to protect his image. And in that darkness, she made a decision. If he wanted war, he'd get it. Not with violence or fear, but with truth. Because now, it wasn't just about what he did to her. It was about every woman he used, every follower he lied to, every person who gave up everything, thinking they were helping a man of God. In the weeks that followed, everything spiraled faster than she imagined. The story spread beyond the local circles. National blogs picked it up. Social media turned into a battlefield. Hashtags with Clarence's name started trending, and people who had once praised him now questioned everything. And then came the twist no one expected. More women came forward. One by one, they sent her messages. some short, some painfully long, stories that mirrored hers, promises, manipulation, guilt trips masked as spiritual guidance. It was a pattern, and now the pattern had a name: Clarence Green. A man who used the pulpit not to heal, but to hide. The more stories came out, the clearer it became. This wasn't just one failed marriage. This was a system of control that had gone unchecked for years. The pressure on Clarence grew, sponsors pulled out, speaking engagements were canceled. His once packed Sunday services looked half empty, but still, he didn't take responsibility. In a surprise live stream, Clarence finally addressed the situation. Dressed in a simple hoodie, sitting in what looked like his home office, he stared into the camera with teary eyes. He said he was a flawed man, that he had fallen short and needed time for reflection and healing. But not once did he say her name. Not once did he apologize directly to the women he had hurt. He made it about himself, his pain, his growth, his so-called journey back to grace. She watched it in silence. Not angry, just disappointed. It was the same charm he used on her, the same soft-spoken tone, but now it had no power. People saw through it. The comments flooded in, not sympathy, but anger. Where's the apology? What about the women? You don't get to play victim. But Clarence wasn't finished. Days later, his legal team sent her a cease and desist letter. They claimed defamation, harassment, emotional damage. She felt a flicker of panic, but it passed because she had proof. She had the truth, and if they wanted to go to court, she was ready. With the help of her allies, she hired a lawyer and countered the threats. She also filed a restraining order, submitted the envelope and the photos to police, and for the first time, felt like the law might be on her side. Slowly, the fear started fading. Support began pouring in, not just from strangers online, but from people she had once sat next to in church. People who whispered their own stories, people who thanked her for being brave. Some had left the church in silence, too scared to say why. Now they had a voice through her. She didn't want revenge anymore. She wanted freedom for herself and for everyone who had lived under Clarence's shadow. So she started something new, a quiet community, a space for women who had been spiritually manipulated, a place to heal, no sermons, no pretending, just truth. And Clarence, he faded. Slowly, quietly. He didn't go to jail. He didn't confess. But the power he once had, the power to lie, to cheat, to silence, was gone. His name no longer brought praise, only questions. And for a man who once stood on stages under spotlights, that silence was the loudest judgment of all. As for her, she wasn't the same woman who had walked into that church years ago, thinking love and faith were the same thing. She had been broken, but not destroyed. And now she stood tall, not as someone's wife, not as a victim, but as the voice that refused to be silenced.